Hello, my name is Viola Pierce, and I am here to speak with you about Florence Nightingale um, for my classroom. My PowerPoint is entitled Florence Nightingale, the Lady with the Lamp, and Nursing 511, Theoretical Foundations, a Multidisciplinary Approach from ECPI. I wanted to first preface it by um, I wanted you to help you gain an understanding of why I chose Florence Nightingale. The reason why I chose her was simply because in the past I've heard my instructors or professors talk about Florence Nightingale. And when I first came into nursing school, you know that you have to learn all these tasks and learn all the things that you need to do in order to be able to take care of your patient. So it's truly thinking like a bedside nurse. So I didn't understand completely and why we had to go back to a history. I understood that she started, nursing as a profession, kind of was a pioneer behind nursing as a profession, but not really that she started it, that she was the pioneer behind, it becoming a profession, it becoming a respected profession. But I just really didn't understand why we needed to know about her. I was like, what's the big deal? Why do we need to know about her? And so she was the one that I chose for this reasoning. Um, in this PowerPoint, I want to that my objective is to go over her background, her history, the components of her nursing theory, the relational statements, whether she used inductive, her theory was inductive or deductive, and the impact on nursing research and practice. So let me give you a little bit of background on Florence Nightingale. She was born May 12, 1820. She was born to a very wealthy family. Very early on in life, she was motivated to care for the sick, and she took care of one of her aunts, and she, I guess she felt that it was God's calling, is what the research says. She thought it was God's calling to take care of the sick and the injured. Now, she was privately educated by her father, and the reason why she was privately educated by her father was because at that time, women did not receive public education. And so her father privately educated her. Her mother and her sister actually were very opposed to this because they felt that she should be a socialite, as women were who were wealthy in those days. But she was not having that. Um, she she knew that nurses they were considered to be low class and promiscuous, and that's the reason why her mother didn't want her to become a nurse. But she was determined that she was going to become a nurse. She attended a nursing program in Kaiserwerth, Germany from 1850 to 1851. She was 30 years old at this time. And at that time, it's the only official nursing school that there was. After she came out of school, she then went on to become nursing superintendent for the Institution for Care of the Sick and Gentlewomen in Circumstances. She was a nursing superintendent at this facility for about a year. And, it was very surprising to me, but she was never paid for her job there, which was very, surprising. But I guess with a wealthy family, she was able to be okay with not being paid. And at that time, she implemented many changes that improved care. Now, the history also goes back to Sidney Herbert. So Sidney Herbert and her were friends apparently prior to they had formed a connection. And Sidney Herbert was the Secretary of War during the Crimean War. And so as a result of this war, there were many soldiers that were dying. And so he contacted Nightingale. Nightingale actually contacted him. They were trying to contact each other at the same time. And they got together. She decided, and he decided for her to go over to Turkey to the Scutavi army barracks, and for her to get together with 38 other nurses and to try to bring these men back to health. The opposing army had nuns that came in and helped them with their soldiers to nurse them back to health. And so, you know, Sidney Herbert wanted to have this done for himself. Once she got over there, she found that there was dreadful conditions in the war. She also encountered opposition from the physicians, and the reason why she encountered this is because, you know, she believed that nurses should be women and they should be autonomous. She believed that they should work alongside the physicians but not be subservient to the physicians. And so, you know, she received that opposition, but, you know, early on in her life, she received the opposition from her mother and her sister. And so she was not, you know, she was not new to this opposition. She was well versed in it, and so she handled it without pause. Um, she noted at that time the source of the soldiers' deaths, and I have some listed here, but it's not limited to this list. The transport to the hospital, the state of the hospitals in which they were in, the open sewers, the deficiency in the cleanliness, pure water, fresh air, and wholesome food. And, you know, it's kind of funny how, you know, we wash our hands all the time now, and you know, we're very clean, or try to be as clean as we can with any procedure. And, you know, back then that was a challenge for them. And so she was a pioneer in that also. Something that seems so basic to us now, she had to battle with. So she introduced a new system that cut the casualties from 48% to 2%. And that is just phenomenal statistics. I mean, from 48%, from half the army dying to 2% of the army dying. I mean, that's completely phenomenal. And she was also considered the lady with the lamp. And so I didn't understand what the lamp was about. I figured that she carried it around at night, but I didn't understand the significance of it. And so the reason why she went around at night was just to see whether the soldiers were healing, you know, what the progress was. And also because the nurses that, you know, normally they were considered as being promiscuous, she wanted to make sure that they were not out sleeping with the injured soldiers. Now, whether her nursing theory was inductive or deductive, so it's inductive development. Okay, so first she observed the poor conditions of the war, and then she noticed a pattern, and then she formed her hypothesis as the reason why the soldiers had the high mortality rate. And so she listed the reasons as poor air, you know, dirty water, inefficient drainage, and cleanliness, and poor lighting. And then she collected the data that she needed to collect, and she formed her theory. Now, the components of her nursing theory, or what it is and what it's not, is the first part is healing. Okay, and so after the healing, secondary to that is leadership and global action. And so in healthcare reform today, you know, I see it's almost like a light bulb came on as to where she formed that foundation. She formed that foundation that, you know, you lead leadership and global action in order to be able to really change. You know, our outcomes, you know, we're graded based on our outcomes these days, as opposed to what she was graded on way back when. But she knew that that's what needed to happen in order to have better outcomes. And I mean, it's phenomenal how she innately knew this without having someone else to tell her this, you know. Essential to healing, to sustain its deepest to sustain it at its deepest level. So the leadership and the global action was secondary to the healing, but it was to the healing so that it could sustain it at its deepest level. You know, she implemented strict record keeping. You know, we keep records today on the patients. She's the one that implemented this. Statistical reporting. She started statistically reporting out from 48% to 2%. And then she is the one person that had the polar area diagram. She started this. And basically this, it identified where the deaths were happening, you know, where and they were happening from, whether they were happening from wounds and battles, whether they were happening from other causes, whether they were happening from diseases. she kind of had a area diagram to help us understand, exactly where these casualties in war were coming from. Now, once she went to the Crimean War, and then she came back to England, and she transformed the Army Medical School. She really highly regarded Lambert Quintelet. He was the statistician. What he did was he correlated statistics and human behavior. And so she really kind of honed in on that. She really wanted to understand that and, grasp that, so that she was able to understand statistically how people change depending on, their treatment or their care. And from this, she initiated a record-keeping program for government health statistics. Now, her most memorable thing is that she started the Nightingale School for Nurses at St. Thomas. Relational statements is that healthy environment is essential to healing. One thing about Nightingale is that she really she focused on the patient, but she really focused on the environment also. But she did it from, a leadership point. What I found out was that, as I done my research, is that she really didn't have a whole lot of bedside nursing. She really didn't do a whole lot of bedside nursing. She did more leadership. She had maybe 4 months of the actual bedside nursing, but, she was in there to change the environment, to help the healing come from the environment. To put the Constitution in such a state is that it is well have no disease, or that it can recover from disease. So, she put a constitution in place that so that we would have no disease, or at least attempt to not have any disease. Pathology teaches you the harm that disease has done, nothing more. We know nothing of the principle of health. Nothing but observation and experience will teach us the ways to maintain or to bring back the state of health. And she understood that. She understood that at the core, that, we need to observe and we need to experience things that comes along. And then that will teach us the way to bring those back to health. To nurse is a field in which one may say there is no end to what we may be learning every day. And, I guess I used to always think that a body is a body is a body is a body. But I never really understood at that time that, each body is very, very different. And this is very early on in my nursing career. Each body is very, very different. And that, we learn something about the body every single solitary day, and that is very complex. Her impact on nursing research and practice is that, she really had the grasp on statistical benchmarkings for hospital performance. I mean, she started that out. She is the one who was the founder of statistically benchmarking the performance at war, the performance at the hospital when she got back to the hospital. She was the first one. She was the pioneer. She was very innovative in that. She improved clinical care for the patients that were there. And she redesigned the barracks and the hospitals that she was in. She felt like you had to have lighting. She felt like, this particular bed didn't need to be here. It needed to maybe be there in order to induce healing, in order to have that environment where you're able to heal. So she was, and here's my references, but she was really, really a pioneer when it came to this whole thing of nursing. And she really, really went above and beyond in order to be able to do what she needed to do in order to